All right, good afternoon and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Zach Hubeck with MBSI Wave. So glad all of you were able to join us today. If you're here for the virtual WISP advisory forum brought to you by MBSI Wave and RUCKUS, you're absolutely in the right place and you are in great company. We're going to have such a great session today in regard to a lot of great things in the world of RUCKUS, MBSI Wave, and the grants office. So I am very, very excited for this session. Let me get started and kicked off on what we're going to cover today. So let's do some introductions to some key team members. As all of you may or may not know, MBSI Wave is RUCKUS and CommScope's latest distributor for Canada, covering all of Canada. And some players we have on the call today. Myself, again, I'm Zach Hubeck. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing, and I have responsibility not only for MBSI Wave, but also Wave in the States. We have Nicole Devereaux on the line with us today with MBSI Wave. She is our marketing manager. And we've got Paul Lefebvre, business development executive who handles the East, Provincial East for Canada, and Cody Cochran, who handles the West. So team members, it's great to see you today. Thanks for making the call, and we couldn't be more excited for our session. All right, let's introduce some more players. And these are our panelists and our speakers today. We've got put together just a rock star panel, and I'll get into exactly what we're going to cover with these fine folks in a few moments. But first, I want to introduce Erica Perkins. She's the business development manager at RUCKUS Networks. This is probably my 10th Airwaves podcast or advisory forum I've done with Erica, and she's just a great presenter and extremely informative. So Erica, really, really good to see you today. We've got Ashley Schultz and Stephanie Caesar from the grants office. And so we're talking about technology, tools for your customers today, and funding areas where we can help you with projects. And that really encapsulates what we're trying to accomplish today. And Ashley and Stephanie are going to help us on that grants office side of the business. We're then going to bounce over to Mr. Tom Schwab, Thomas Schwab, Director of Sales Acceleration Global for RUCKUS Networks. Thomas, great to see you again, sir. And then we're going to wrap this whole thing with Matt Bianco, who's Principal Systems Engineer at RUCKUS, and he is going to help us out with some proof of concept stuff. So let me dive into the real meat and potatoes of this session, folks. So, you know, we love our virtual events now that we're used to Teams and Zoom. And so what we'll do, this session will go extremely fast. We've got a brief 3 hours together. And really our agenda for today, we've got our proper chronology of our speakers, but Erica's going to walk us through first and foremost, who is RUCKUS Networks, solutions and case studies for public Wi-Fi, and really warm us up to what are some of the key projects RUCKUS has worked on previously and how can we apply this in Canada. We're then going to bounce over to Ashley and Stephanie. So we'll talk about the technology use cases for RUCKUS and really warm you up there. And then we're going to start talking about funding. So there's a lot of federal and provincial funding that is out there to help and assist our partners on this call for these projects. And Ashley and Stephanie will guide us through those programs and get us a little bit more dangerous today. And how do we find that funding to align with our projects? Then we're going to bounce it over to Thomas Schwab after a 10-minute break. And really, Thomas is going to drive us through who is the Sales Acceleration Group? What does that mean? Who is that team within RUCKUS? And how can I lean on them as subject matter experts to really make my project successful with RUCKUS, with MBSI Wave? You've got really this trio of players supporting you there with the grants office, with RUCKUS, with MBSI Wave. Really, we're excited that Thomas and his team are there to help really kind of align you successfully with these projects with grant funding and really make that sales process very streamlined. And then lastly, Mr. Matt Bianco is going to take us home, how to engage the RUCKUS Networks SE team and provide a proof of concept. So Erica's going to warm us up on the technology. Our grants office crew is going to tell us where to find the funding. Thomas is going to help us with how do we leverage the sales acceleration team? And then Matt's going to bring us home with this. How do we do a proof of concept and what's important to do that? So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to mention one last thing about MBSI Wave being the newest Canadian distributor. A little fun fact, I mentioned my responsibilities are with MBSI Wave and Wave. And so just because MBSI Wave is new to the channel, that doesn't mean they don't carry over a decade of expertise in Wi-Fi and networking, because all of the resources at Wave in the US are backing MBSI Wave and this group who's gonna help us all in this world of Ruckus here. So we've got twice the warehousing capabilities, twice the purchasing capabilities and supply chain navigation, and twice the expertise in engineering. So we're here to all help you and support you with these projects and help you all succeed. So with that said, Miriam, our moderator for today, Miriam, if you could change over to Erica's slides, I'm gonna let Erica run with this presentation. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Erica is our business development manager at Ruckus Networks. Erica, the floor is yours, miss.
Thank you, Zach and team. Thank you guys for having me here. I'm so excited to share with you a little bit about Ruckus and, of course, our use cases for community Wi-Fi. As Zach already mentioned, my name is Erica Perkins. I'm business development manager here at CommScope Ruckus. Next slide, please. A little bit about myself. I've been with CommScope Ruckus for just over 10 years. I reside in the greater Seattle area in the state of Washington, just about an hour and a half short drive to the Canadian border. And the last 10 years, I've been very focused in supporting the vertical go-to-market strategies when it comes to public sector and healthcare and federal funding program practices throughout North America. Next slide, please. For today's agenda, for at least my topic and portion of today's presentation, complete the first introduction. I'll provide a brief overview of who is Ruckus and what are our solutions and products. Give a little bit of background into the digital equity challenges public sector and education institutions are facing today, especially in the wake of the pandemic and post-pandemic. And then talk about how they've come together to really solve that challenge through use cases of community Wi-Fi. And then, of course, answer any questions that are along the way. Next slide, please. So Ruckus has really built its business by enabling its customers to deliver a better connection experience to their own constituencies, employees, guests, customers, students, subscribers. Organizations for which that end user experience matters to their business outcomes, they seek Ruckus out. But of course, those great end user experiences don't just happen. Someone has to make them happen, and that job falls to IT. We've also built our business around making it simpler for IT to deliver that great end user connectivity experience called the IT user experience. Ultimately, it's about saving time so IT can spend less of it managing the network and more of it on projects that are strategic to the business. And both of these outcomes can be accomplished with unlimited funds, but we don't require that, of course, from our customers. And this is the third pillar of our value proposition, making every network element do more and in turn allowing you to deploy fewer network elements. Fewer network elements means fewer licenses, fewer cables, less power, and so on. And to give a common example, we regularly deploy networks with 30% fewer APs than our competitors specify. Another example, we offer multi-gigabit ports on entry-level access switches. Our competitors would make you buy the high-end switch. And that's exactly why some of these marquee names trust Ruckus with their networks. And let me walk you through just a handful of those on the next slide. If you've ever had to look up directions or a particular restaurant or venue on the streets of New York using their Link New York City public Wi-Fi system, then you've used Ruckus Wi-Fi solution. We power Link New York City. Marriott International, the world's #1 hospitality chain by revenue and by the number of rooms, trusts Ruckus to provide that unmatched customer experience at 3,700 plus of their hotels in 30 plus countries. Everyone knows shared working space WeWork. Well, Ruckus provides that enterprise class connectivity to over 100,000 people daily at various WeWork locations worldwide. The biggest network after the internet is US Navy. RUCKUS powers US Navy's networks within other federal government arms, connecting over 500,000 users. And lastly, everyone knows Accor Hotels Arena, one of the largest public venues for a variety of entertainment events with a capacity of over 20,000. And once again, RUCKUS powers their network such that patrons can remain connected and are able to share their entertainment experiences with their friends and family leveraging the RUCKUS Wi-Fi. And that leads me to just how we deliver this. Next slide, please. We deliver it by building converged wired and wireless networks for enterprises and service providers. And that starts with Wi-Fi access points that have for a decade consistently outperformed our counterparts. We have numerous patents that make that possible, and the APs are at the heart of how we deliver great end user experiences. APs are, of course, managed by WLAN controllers, and we have a portfolio that supports every kind of deployment scenario, from the simplest to the most complex. Our lineup of ICX switches covers the needs of the entire campus from access or edge, powering the APs to aggregation and core. Our most powerful switches provide the capabilities of chassis-based switches without the upfront investment. Secure network access software in the form of our CloudPath product allows any user and any device to join any network, wired or wireless, securely. And we embed network intelligence into our controllers and provide a standalone capability for larger networks. In the standalone form, we offer AI ML-enabled network analytics and assurance, which automatically alerts IT to network anomalies and offers actionable insights to fix those before they become service affecting. Our location software provides footfall and asset location data while simultaneously serving as an enabler for location-based services delivered by ecosystem partners. And 2018, we announced the RUCKUS IoT Suite, a new approach to building access networks to support IoT deployments. We call those IoT access networks. So let me give you a little insight into our portfolio. Next slide, please. With RUCKUS products and solutions, any organization, regardless of size or sophistication, can easily deploy, manage, and expand a converged IT/OT network while addressing unique business outcomes. With the help of machine learning and AI, IT can troubleshoot faster and proactively create, measure, and meet SLAs that address the evolving need of their users. RUCKUS CloudPath Enrollment System is software SaaS that delivers secure network access for any user and any device on any network. Powered by machine learning and artificial intelligence, RUCKUS Analytics is a cloud service for network analytics and assurance. The expansive RUCKUS network management portfolio addresses the needs of organizations of all types and sizes, whether you choose cloud managed with RUCKUS Cloud, on-premises, physical virtual controller with Smart Zone, or controller-less with RUCKUS Unleashed. The common element is network simplicity and unified management. The RUCKUS IoT Suite reduces infrastructure spend and simplifies the creation of IoT access networks by connecting Wi-Fi and non-Wi-Fi IoT endpoints with a single multi-standards wireless access network. And RUCKUS ICX stackable switches are designed to excel in a wide range of deployment scenarios, from access to core to 1 gigabit Ethernet to 100 gigabit Ethernet, copper or fiber, with or without PoE, and with multi-gigabit and high PoE support. The RUCKUS wireless product line offers a broad range of indoor and outdoor access points with embedded IoT connectivity to fit just about any budget, performance requirement, or deployment scenario. And now that you're a little bit more familiar with RUCKUS, let's dive into understanding the challenges today solving the digital divide. Next slide, please. High-speed broadband is increasingly becoming an indicator of economic prosperity. In North America, millions of students still struggle to participate in remote learning because they didn't have access to internet at the home. And the pandemic really enforced the reality that the digital divide doesn't just exist between rural and urban communities, but it's within North America's largest cities. Some 500,000 households lack reliable connection in New York City, for example. And in Chicago, 1 in 5 students don't have broadband access. Next slide. The digital divide isn't a new concept and has been attempted to be addressed in multiple forms, and previously has been known in K-12 space as the homework gap. Prior to the pandemic, the adoption of digital infrastructure and devices in the classroom and on campus have been an ongoing effort and been funded through multiple federal and provincial programs and grants, and in the US covered through the federal E-rate program. However, it's always a continuous cycle as equipment needs to be refreshed and updated as new technologies get released. Public sector agencies have been pursuing an equitable digital experience between classrooms and campuses. But then what happens when the students go home? The digital classroom is no longer limited to the classroom itself, but has extended to the home, the school bus, or now even the local McDonald's. It's become less about the digital classroom and more about the student digital experience. Next slide, please. Expanding the digital environment from the classroom to the home, we're faced with disparate access and must address access and affordability of broadband networks. It is clear that as long as the digital divide is present, a fully remote work or learning model cannot be achieved equitably. And this is where the public sector makes the biggest impact. Schools are limited in the types of funding and resources they can access to effectively address the digital divide, but by working together, the public sector can accomplish so much more. Next slide. For example, in San Antonio, Texas, where more than 38% of households lack in-home internet access, also relied on pre-existing infrastructure. The municipally owned utility had years ago built an extensive network of fiber optic cables that delivered internet to government buildings and community centers like schools and libraries. And when those centers closed, leaving underserved students in a lurch, the city decided to use the US stimulus money to expand that network to the homes of 20,000 students across the city's 50 most vulnerable neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So as we have learned, it takes a village, and by working together, we're not only able to leverage each other's existing resources, but also lean on each other's available public funding options, such as in the US, that was the US stimulus funding, but there's also state and provincial grants, and then in the US foundations. Okay, next slide. As an example, K-12 schools tried to address the challenge of digital equity by themselves during the pandemic. Because they do not have access to municipal resources, they tried mounting outdoor Wi-Fi on their buildings in order to share their Wi-Fi within school parking lots and athletic fields. Next slide. When drive-by parking and mounting APs were not enough, schools attempted to provide access to the students by leveraging and enabling school buses with Wi-Fi, parking them in the most impoverished neighborhoods. As this is really only a temporary solution, with school bus needed to be back in service as some students returned to the classroom, schools began looking into how to act as a service provider. But this came with its own challenges and limitations, such as that limitation to funding. For example, some K-12 school grants won't fund outside the campus. Restrictions to resources, such as that limited access to municipal owned infrastructure, as well as navigating the law. In the US, it actually became illegal in some states for schools to act in that capacity. Next slide. When the community works together, there are economic and societal benefits that can answer that question of why it makes sense to deploy public or community Wi-Fi. This solution not only expands the public funding pool for these projects, but helps service many sectors of the community. For example, when our first responders can access and share information, it saves lives. And when citizens can locate emergency services or up-to-date information on public health, that can save lives. And enabling connected devices like gunshot sensors and security cameras and air and water sensors to detect or even predict flooding or unhealthy air quality, that can save lives. And in a disaster, your carrier cell services may become overwhelmed, and adding Wi-Fi could provide a major offload to keep people safe. City services that are transitioned online often see greater utilization, such as the filing of building permits, reporting potholes, requests for public records, and by providing Wi-Fi, the city knows their citizens can access those services freely. Shopping areas with Wi-Fi available typically see increased foot traffic. 62% more is reported by a device scrape study. And that leads to increased sales. And sales can translate to hiring more staff and boosting the local economy, including sales taxes. We all experienced or are still experiencing an extended work from home situation. And when people can access public Wi-Fi, they are less likely to lose their job or can find new employment more easily if they need to do so. But then what happens to people who cannot afford home broadband? And this last one is by far the most important reason why it's no longer optional to deploy public or community Wi-Fi. Access to the internet has become as essential as access to electricity. But too many people either do not have service available to them or are unable to afford the services being sold. And that has actually been civil rights issues for years, but only now is this issue really in the forefront across North America. Public Wi-Fi provides a bridge to those who need it most, and their future depends on it, literally. Next slide, please. Situated in South Texas, Hidalgo County is home to more than 850,000 people and over a dozen school districts and multiple collegiate institutions. Hidalgo is also ranked as one of the poorest in the nation, with 1/3 of families living below the poverty line. Hidalgo County worked together with their school districts to identify pockets of those most in need, and were able to leverage the US federal stimulus money from the CARES Act to fund a community-wide answer to connectivity. Working together with the right solution providers, Hidalgo was able to provide free public Wi-Fi to over 30,000 students and remote workers. By their layer 3 network design, leveraging as much existing infrastructure as possible, such as water tanks, light, and telephone poles, they were able to expedite service delivery and control costs, resources the schools would be unable to access alone. Next slide. As an example of what types of benefits can span a single agency, Eastside Union High School District in San Jose, California, services over 24,000 students, was able to invest $2.7 million in voter-approved school bond funds to deploy new Wi-Fi infrastructure across city-owned assets. Innovative public partnership leveraged school funding to extend the city-owned and operated public Wi-Fi network. So today, the Access Eastside project is already having major impact in the lives of thousands of students. The network supports high-speed connections and terabytes of data every month. Low-income students who used to have no viable way to do their schoolwork at home can now take full advantage of digital curriculum and school-provided Chromebooks. Next slide, please. We saw the benefits of Eastside Union High School District leveraging a public Wi-Fi network, but what other benefits did the city of San Jose receive by establishing that community Wi-Fi? The city of San Jose was able to deploy parking meters that take credit cards to process payment and track parking availability. And this increased revenue to offset the cost of deployment. Public safety was increased by connecting traffic and safety cameras, including pass-through PoE of power to power some of those devices. And by deploying high quality Wi-Fi in the convention center, revenue increased from added event bookings and selling Wi-Fi as a service to the events. And this also helped to increase employment opportunities for several hundred local convention center employees. The city deployed high performing Wi-Fi downtown based on public feedback. They named it Wickedly Fast Wi-Fi, which drew more people downtown to the shops, restaurant, and bars where they spent more time and money. The service was so popular, it eventually extended to the San Jose International Airport. And as you just learned, the city also allowed Eastside Union High School District to connect to the city fiber in the street poles and backhaul that to their internet connection, where it tunneled back to their school for filtering and identity management. And during COVID-19, Eastside Union High School District students were able to continue learning. So it's clear through public Wi-Fi and working together, more can be achieved towards solving digital equity than being forced to address that challenge alone. But then how does one afford a community Wi-Fi solution? And I'll let the other presenters today touch on that. Thank you.
Erica, great information. Thank you so much for guiding us through not only the RUCKUS portfolio, but some real life applicable situations where the technology is being put to good use to serve the community. And right now it's all about bridging that digital divide, probably an industry overused term, but the bottom line is children need to learn. Businesses need to interact with their businesses, and remote workers, it's a problem. So that digital divide not only exists in the US, but also Canada as well. And so, folks, I'm excited with Erica's content that really wet our whistle on what the technology is about and the projects. And now we've got the grants office up. So I'll introduce Ashley Schultz, who's the Global Manager of Research and Consultation at the Grants Office. And also she has Stephanie Caesar accompanying her, who's the Grants Development Consultant. And they're gonna educate us on what grant programs are out there and what funding services are available to all of you on this call. So Ashley, I turn it over to you, miss.
Thanks very much, Zach. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. Real pleasure to be with you guys today. Like Zach said, my name is Ashley. I am the Global Manager of Research and Consultation. Grants Office has been a company for about 21 years now. We operate in Canada and in the US, also multiple countries of Europe, Brazil, and Australia. So here today to talk to you about what connectivity funding looks like in Canada specifically. At a high level, just talking about, in general, what public funding is available for connectivity projects, that being both broadband and also the public Wi-Fi space that Erica was just mentioning. A quick overview of some of the grant programs that we're seeing in that landscape, and then also some tips for building some successful grant applications. These can be grant applications that are led by internet service providers or by the community that's going to be deploying those connections. So I like to start these conversations by just kind of, in general, setting the stage. Some of you may be kind of jumping into grants for the very first time. Maybe have worked on a grant or two in the past, or have thought grants might sound really great, but just haven't tried them yourselves. And when you kind of go out on Google or on some of these government websites, there's the world is pretty vast of grants. There are grants out there for staff at a daycare center, to hiring high school students for summer internships, to deploying broadband, to building a road, and really everything in between. So it's very easy to kind of quickly become overwhelmed with the number of grant programs. There are just hundreds and hundreds in Canada alone, just from the government, and that gets wider and wider as you start looking at private actors, as Erica alluded to, individual corporations or family trusts. So I just want to start this off by saying, what will you find if you go out there and look for grants? So first and foremost, if you're looking for funding specifically for connectivity, you're going to immediately see two kinds of grants out there. One is going to be grants that are specifically for connectivity. So that's going to be programs that are created for broadband, created to lay fiber, created to make those connections. They're pretty obvious because they oftentimes are going to have broadband or connectivity in the name of the program. These are things like the Universal Broadband Fund. A few years ago, Canada had the Connecting Canadians program. They also have the Broadband and Cellular Expansion Fund. So they have it right in the name. It's usually pretty obvious if you stumble across it. When you dive deeper into the program itself, you're going to see that most of that funding is out there to actually do that construction, to actually build that network. You can use some additional costs for administration, for planning, for scheduling things, but for the most part, it's going to be moving dirt, laying that fiber, making that network happen. Projects inside this category are oftentimes going to be led by the service providers. Sometimes they'll be led by the municipality. It's really whoever is going to be taking care of the network during its construction and after its construction. Those are the folks that are leading the charge on these types of grants. On the other side of things, you have what we would call connectivity-friendly programs. These are out there to fund community needs, economic development, workforce development, education, a lot of the things that Erica was talking about in her presentation. They're not as obvious because the names are different. You may not know that you've stumbled upon one when you find it. These are things like the Canada Community Building Fund. They have one called the Innovative Communities Fund, investing in Canada infrastructure program. Southwestern Ontario has an Ontario Development Fund. So the name references the purpose of the program, what they're trying to do, rather than a specific technology or a specific use case. And it's pretty cool because there are actually dozens and dozens more of these grant programs rather than just the specific connectivity programs that you can leverage. It's all about connecting the dots. So the funder is going to put out a program and say, hey, we'd like to improve economic development in the city center of these provinces. And then it is up to you or up to the applicant to say, we'd like to make public Wi-Fi available. And we see public Wi-Fi assisting economic development and community development in X, Y, Z, A, B, and C ways. So it is upon you or it is upon the applicants to kind of make that connection and make that obvious, because 100 different folks could take that task 100 different ways. And it's up to you to convince the funder that taking it in the public Wi-Fi space in that direction is the best way to make this project happen. And then last, these projects are going to most often be led by the governments or the community players. So Erica was mentioning, adding Wi-Fi to a convention center downtown. That's probably going to be led by the convention center itself or by some sort of downtown authority. And then the internet service providers and the partners that are involved are just that, they're partners in that application. So in terms of the types of award, actually how money is getting to applicants, in Canada, we kind of see these going in 3 different ways. The first, the one that everybody likes the most, is the grants piece. Folks love grants because, they always say it's free money. You don't have to pay it back. Sometimes there could be a cost sharing or a match component there. So the government says, hey, we'll cover half of this, but you have to cover the rest. But what's nice about grants is that you don't have to pay back the 50% that they are giving you. You're going to see that grants have either a competitive or an allocation type of distribution. So competitive is probably what we all jump to when we think of grants. You write an application, you work really hard on it, you try your best, you click submit, and then really it's up to the grant funder to pick the best projects that they saw in the stack. And those are the folks that are going to receive funding. We also see allocations happen in grants. So this is a province decides that they're going to give money to schools, and they're going to take their long list of schools. They're going to run some sort of formula, how many students there are, how many students they have that are low to moderate income, how many students they have that have special needs. They're going to do some sort of formula. That formula is going to spit out a bunch of dollar values, and then each school is going to be eligible for that amount of money. There's no up or down, there's no competition for it. If I'm a school district in Southwestern Ontario, I find my name on the list, look to the right, see my number, and that's how much I have to play with. So again, grants, you're going to kind of see them span those 2 categories. Folks love grants, we love grants. The name of our company is Grants Office. But I also want to kind of draw your attention to contributions and loans. So contributions, they are something that's actually pretty unique to Canada. They are sometimes similar to grants in that you don't have to repay them. Sometimes you do have to repay them. So you're going to see things like non-repayable, conditionally repayable, unconditionally repayable. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to make a flexible funding arrangement so that if you have to repay it back, for example, they'll set up some sort of agreement that says, hey, we know that this network is going to be profitable for you. So you don't have to pay us back until the construction is done and until that money is starting to flow back. Or, hey, we're going to do this in stages. You can have X number of dollars for the first stage, show us your results, and then we'll give you the next batch of funding. So contributions are pretty unique. We see them a lot with very large projects and large projects specifically that are heading towards the public, or the private sector. And then last we have loans. People usually are down on loans because you have to pay them back, and they're like, oh no, let's do grants. But I encourage you to think about loans. I encourage your customers to think about loans because frankly, large municipalities, all 3 of these funding schemes are probably part of their annual considerations. They're part of their budget process. So don't shy away from thinking about loans. Grants, loans, and contributions can kind of all play a central role to making a connectivity project happen.
Ashley, I've got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
When it comes to aligning with the goals of the municipality or the
Mhm.
province, how can you help our audience really think through, I want to craft this grant, or I want to craft this loan document or proposal in the best way forward? What are some ways or areas people should look? How do I know what those provincial goals are or municipal goals? And
Mhm.
is there a trick to authoring those to be more successful?
Yeah. Yep. So I do have some slides about that here in a couple of minutes, but
Uh-huh.
in terms of where to find that information, the government of Canada frequently publishes reports and long-term goals, long-term objectives. There are dozens of reports that have their eye on 2030 or 2050. So the provinces themselves and sometimes even municipalities have them. They can have long-term transportation plans. They can have long-term city plans. In a former life, I was a city planner, and we always referred back to those plans, and we always included lines from that plan in our grant application. And we said, hey, we want to add some streetscapes along this road. We want to add some trees, some sidewalks, because it's in our long-term transportation plan to have this particular section of the community be more walkable. And that kind of
Awesome.
showed that this is not something we just came up with because this grant is open. We've been planning this for a really long time. So yeah, you can always kind of tap into those long-term planning documents, I think would be a good place to start.
Cool. Thank
As
you,
a
Miss.
teaser for 10 minutes from now.
Awesome. And for folks on the line that do have questions as well, feel free to leverage that button on the bottom of our screens. There's the Q&A button or the chat. So please do fire away. This is a lot of stuff to consume here. And if you do have questions, I'll either poke Ashley and say, heads up, I got a really relevant question based on that slide, or we may hold it to the end. So Ashley, back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks. So we have the types of grants, what you're going to see when you look for grants. We have the types of awards you're going to see. And now I just want to give you a high level look of who's actually coming up with this money, who's actually putting these programs into play. In Canada, we generally see three and a half different types of folks put forward money. First, you're going to have the federal government agencies. This is folks like Infrastructure Canada, Transport Canada, ISED, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. These are federal government agencies. They have tax dollars. They're writing those big long-term plans, and they're putting grant programs together, or contribution programs or loan programs, to make their goals happen. Federal government grant programs, these are going to be the largest awards. So these are going to be in the hundreds of thousands, sometimes into the millions. And they're going to be, because they're the largest, they're going to be the most complex, meaning they're going to require the most of you. They're going to have the longest application requirements, and they're also going to be the most competitive. Think about it, it's the entire country of Canada having access to this grant program. So they are among the most difficult, but they have the biggest payoffs because they have the largest award amounts behind them. Tapping into the federal government just a little bit is that, I mentioned 3.5. We also have economic development agencies that are kind of spanning either one province or multiple provinces. So this is like Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, for example, ACOA. There's also one for Southern Ontario called FedDev, Federal Economic Development Agency of Southern Ontario. These folks get their money from the federal government, but they operate on a regional level to make regional priorities happen. So they are going to be one step down from those federal government grants in that they're slightly less competitive, slightly smaller, slightly easier to apply for, but you still can get pretty significant award sizes out of those grant programs. The really cool thing about those regional economic development agencies is that they're incredibly collaborative. They're very tapped into each region that they support, and they actually encourage you to call them when you have a project idea. Some grants even require you to call them and get a nod of approval before you submit, so you kind of know you're going in the right direction. Down from there is the provincial government agencies. This is going to be British Columbia putting together a grant based on their own tax dollars that's only going to be spent inside British Columbia, and it's specifically targeted towards problems or issues that they're seeing in those boundaries. Again, as we kind of go lower and lower in the pile, these are less competitive, they are shorter applications, and the award sizes are going to be smaller. Last, we have the private and corporate foundations. These are large companies who have set aside some money for corporate giving. They're small local community foundations, they're family trusts. These folks are giving to things that they find important. And sometimes you are going to see that community development, improving health outcomes, improving educational outcomes are going to be a priority of those organizations. They're going to give the smallest amount of money, so they're going to be for your really small size projects, or they could be for the local match components of your federal government grants. So if you have to come up with $100,000 for your $2 million grant, well, a local community foundation is not going to be able to give you $2 million, but they might be able to help towards that $100,000 match and take the burden off of the municipality or the school who's working on that application. And then last in my introduction is just kind of the timeline. Folks who are tapped into the sales cycle are always very, this is important. So for the most part, you're going to get about 4 to 8 weeks to work on a grant application. Most grant programs are going to be due on a single day of the year. Thou shalt submit your application by May 5th, or else if you don't, you're stuck waiting for an additional 12 months. There are some grant programs that accept applications all year, but for the most part, it's just a single day. Once you click submit, you do have to wait a little while to hear back from the funder whether they said yes or no to your application. During that time, you really do have to hit pause on the project. You can't spend money, move dirt, or do anything that you promise in your application while you wait to hear yes or no. Once you do hear yes, you've got a few more weeks of just dotting your I's, crossing your T's, signing some contracts with the funder until you really get things going. Throughout that whole cycle, I have at the beginning there the project creation piece. I put that in a different color because for the most part, if you only have 4 to 8 weeks to prepare an application, most folks are doing the project design, the project creation before that grant application is open. Finding out today that a grant is due on June 1st is really not enough time to say, hey, let's build this network, let's plan this network, design it, and then go get funding. That's often not a long enough runway to make that happen. So the folks who are best positioned to go after grants have a project idea, they have it in their long-term plan, as Zach mentioned. They're ready to go, they have their drawings, they're just waiting for funding to come available to them. So I know my introduction was really long. I'm sorry about that. But I like to kind of lay that groundwork because some of you may jump online or maybe are right now jumping online and looking for grants. I have a few to share with you today, but I in no way can talk about all of them during our time here. So I wanted you to just, if you do go out and look yourself, to know what you're looking for and know what you found when you find it. But here are a couple of example programs. So this is largely a rehash of what Erica just said, and I'm sure it's what you guys live and breathe every day. So I won't spend too long on this slide, but Canada, the government is committed to increasing connectivity over the long term. They have a goal to make sure 100% of Canadians are connected to high-speed internet by 2030. They're on track to get that to 98% of residents by 2026. Since 2015, they've set aside $7.2 billion in investments for this connectivity goal. I say set aside because they haven't allocated all of it yet. On the right-hand side, there's this chart that shows where some of that money is going based on each province or territory. This chart is updated as of September 2021. So we have about a 6-month gap in reporting. I'm sure more money has been allocated, but as of September, the $7.2 billion that they had, 2.6 has been allocated across the country for connectivity. So lots more to come, which is great for us. In addition to those connectivity specific programs, the budgets, if we look at the budget this year that was released last month, or the budget that came out last year, all throughout you're going to see emphasis on rural communities, improving health outcomes, improving education, responding to the pandemic, bouncing back after the pandemic, reviving tourism, innovation, business development. So all those things that I mentioned before can be argued for connectivity projects are throughout the budget and are really laced throughout the grant landscape of Canada. So probably a very familiar household name in terms of public funding for broadband is this Universal Broadband Fund. It was offered by ISED. They have $2.75 billion put forward for construction through 2027. They had a couple of set-asides in there for mobile internet, high impact projects, shovel-ready projects, et cetera. Folks could pick up some money in those set-asides, or they could apply to the general funding pool. We did reach out to ISED before this presentation and confirmed what we thought, but they do think that they have the last batch of applications in hand. They did accept proposals through March of this year, and they think that they're going to be able to allocate what's left of that fund in that batch of applications that they have. So this, at this point in time, is not an available opportunity, unless you submitted a grant application and you're waiting to hear back. If so, good luck. But it's not going to be accepting new applications unless the government of Canada in one of their budget cycles actually adds more money to this program. So in the meantime, we're kind of looking for other opportunities, and luckily there are a lot to find. This is a pool of money offered by CRTC. It's $750 million. The money came from large telecommunications providers operating in Canada. They pooled their money together, gave it to CRTC, and now they're distributing this funding across areas that are currently underserved or have no service whatsoever. Let's see, I have my notes here. Most awards for this program are 1.5 to 10 million or so, but we do see folks drop below that 1.5 million, and we do see folks far exceed that 1.5 million. There are some awards out there that are in the tens of millions of dollars for this program. These are grants. And then as of March 2022, CRTC came out and said that they had allocated about $206 million so far. So they've done 2 rounds of applications. We know they still have 3 left. Of that 206 million, they have brought broadband to about 170 communities and approximately 30,000 households. I've got a few example funded projects here so you can kind of see what that looks like. Just back in March, they did 6 access projects and 1 mobile project for 19.5 million, so exceeding kind of that average of 10. And back in August, they did 10 access only projects and an access mobile project, and those combined tallied up to 20.5 million, heading out to 3,600 households. So really cool program, pretty straightforward, definitely applies to that left-handed side of broadband specific project, connectivity specific project. And there's a huge demand for this program. So in this orange box, in their second batch of requests, they got 600 applications and $1.5 billion in requests. So they're still going through that stack of applications. Once they have committed all of year 2's funding, they will be opening up another round of applications.
Actually, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
You know, being US based, the FCC publishes awardees of certain federal and state programs. Does that work the same in Canada? So my question is mostly directed at that Universal Broadband Fund. Even though that the last batch of applications has closed and that window has closed for our attendees, there is, in my mind's eye, the potential of collaboration. And how do I, as a service provider on this call, buddy up with whomever has applied for that, and they may need help with installations or services or things like that. Do people on this call have the ability to see who have been awarded those funds for the Universal Broadband Fund specifically? Yep.
So in general, what you are going to see in terms of publicly available information is a list of awardees. So it is very, very infrequent that we see folks say like, hey, these 400 people applied and we gave it to these 40, and you get to see all the winners and losers. Most often you're just going to see bare bones details about who received the money. Oftentimes for CRTC, for example, it is the name of the company, how much money they are awarded, what communities they're going to be operating in, and their timeline. So I believe the same is going to be true for the Universal Broadband Fund.
All right, thank you, Miss.
Yeah, good idea. So that's connectivity specific projects. Now I want to do kind of the tangential connectivity supporting projects. These are not going to have connectivity or broadband in the name, but they do absolutely support it. It's just incumbent upon the applicants to make those connections obvious in their application. So things like the Canada Community Building Fund are a great place to start. This is one of those allocation grants that I mentioned before. So 3,600 communities are going to share about $2 billion each year with this funding. If I'm a city in British Columbia, I simply pull up the spreadsheet, find my name on the list, and see how much I'm allocated. They make distributions 2 times a year, and there are 19 different project categories that the individual municipalities or communities can choose from. Broadband connectivity being one of those 19. There are also things like culture, tourism, sport, recreation. So again, you can make those connections in whatever way you like. We want to improve sports facilities in our community, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z to all of our fields, and we're also going to add Wi-Fi. Like, you know, those are the kinds of things that we see folks doing with these dollars. Communities know about this funding. You're not going to surprise them if you bring this up to them, but what you can do is have conversations with them to say, hey, how much are you receiving, and do you know what that's heading towards? I know we've been talking for a long time about this public Wi-Fi project. Have you considered using that as a source of funding to make this happen? There's also a lot of regional funding opportunities. So I mentioned before that the federal government funds a variety of regional development authorities, and they're all operating in either one or multiple provinces and territories. They each have their own batch of programs. They each target their programs specifically to what they're seeing happen in their region. So things like the CEDD program here on the left, that is all about economic development. How do we attract more businesses? How do we help our businesses that are already here gain more knowledge, share information with each other? If you want to build like a hub where all businesses can come and share ideas and do group webinars like we're doing right now, how can we kind of strengthen our regional competitiveness is really the emphasis of this program. We did see the Village of Alex use this program, I think back in March of this year, to add a wheelchair accessible Wi-Fi park downtown. So this has all sort of community and economic development components to it, and then also that connectivity piece added on. Tangential to that is the Tourism Relief Fund. This is $1 billion that the Canada government set aside for the tourism sector after COVID-19. We're now in the 2nd year of that program, and it's all about tourism experiences, products, attracting more visitors locally, attracting more visitors from across the country, attracting more visitors internationally. And we saw a convention center in London use this funding, I believe last fall, to upgrade their public Wi-Fi in the convention center and then immediately outside as well. So Erica mentioned an example in the US of a convention center making that offer. The same thing is happening in Canada with this grant program. And like I said, I don't have time to talk about all of them, but I definitely encourage you to check it out. There are a lot more that I did not talk about. More from the federal government, more from individual provinces, more from the territories, and then also from the private funder space. If you're working with a municipality or working with an organization that's interested in grant funding, make sure that they're covering that entire landscape and they're not leaving stones unturned because they're only looking at Transport Canada. And if Transport Canada doesn't have anything, they stop looking, because they should definitely make sure that they look at that entire landscape. And then I just want to end here today on exactly what Zach was asking before. What can we do to make sure we put our best foot forward on an application? What are some best practices that you can kind of share with the folks you're working with? The first thing, and probably the most important thing, is to focus on the outcome. It can be really tricky when you're in the weeds of this widget goes with this gadget and we need, all these different components. The grant funders themselves, particularly the folks that are focused on community development and economic development, they don't speak that language, and they don't, that's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is an outcome. What is this going to do? What is this network going to provide? What does this community, or what is this park, or what is this school going to look like after the network has been deployed? So that's a really, really important thing to not ignore in the application, and to make sure every line item of the budget goes back to that outcome. I can see very clearly why you included all of these things and how all of these things support community development or economic development, how all of these things are going to help you with startups downtown, how all of these things are going to help your government offices to share data, become more effective, become more collaborative. Erica mentioned a public safety, disaster preparedness angle. If that is what you're going to leverage your network for, make sure that you say, hey, this is going to help the armed services in this way. It's going to help our fire department in this way. It's going to help our first responders in this way. The more data driven, the more specific that you can get about the outcome, the more that's going to resonate with the funders, and the more they're going to say like, oh yeah, this is great stuff. I can't wait for them to deploy this network and see how this stuff happens. Once you have an idea of where you're heading, you kind of want to back build a comprehensive project. So in addition to including all the information about the network, a grant application should say, who's involved with this project. Erica mentioned quite a few examples of schools and communities coming together. Brag about that. Absolutely. This is a collaborative effort between this school district, this community center, this library, and this government agency. Just the same as in the US, the Canada government loves collaborative applications. They love to see multiple members of a community rowing their boat in the same direction. Why is this project the best option to solve a given problem? Why, of all of the 19 different things you could have done with this grant application, why did you choose public Wi-Fi? Why did you choose deploying a network? Make sure the grant funder understands that you thought about this from a bunch of different angles, and you decided that this was the absolute best way to take this, and here's why. Maybe you even have some statistics on what the educational outcomes are for students who have access to internet at homes, or homework return rates or something like that. Make sure that they understand you thought this through, and this is really the best solution. Where the project's going to take place, particularly if you're going to be laying fiber, how many households do you think you're going to impact? Where are those communities? Are they underserved? At what extent are they underserved? Any sort of information that you can gather to paint the scene, paint the picture for the funder, so they understand what you're doing, where you're doing it, and why it's incredibly important that this project get funded. And then, kind of the other questions that we have here, what are you going to need in terms of your budget? When will you do it is a big component. Do you have a timeline? And then again, how is this going to benefit the community? How does this fit within the broader context? How does this fit within that community's 30-year plan or 10-year plan? You can just pull things directly out of that plan and say, hey, this is directly connected to this goal we've had for a long time. Two more things. One, make sure your team's grant ready. Get all your ducks in a row. The lovely little rubber duck picture. Engage partner agencies early, figure out who's who, and make sure they're all sitting at the same table at the same time, talking about what this looks like, and make sure everybody's contributing to the best way that they can. Rally team members who are going to meaningfully contribute to your project. It would be really cool if 7 different agencies all came together and did this project, but if 3 of them are too busy or probably not going to contribute, adding them to your application in name only feels a little hollow, and a lot of times the grant funders can see. So think about who your partner agencies are going to be, but pick them carefully and make sure they're going to be folks who are not just saying, sure, this sounds like a great project, go for it, and are actually saying, what can we do? How can we make this a reality? Dive into your local statistics. Any information that you can gather about what the current situation is now and what you think it will be in the near future is huge for a grant application. You can look for communities like yourself in Canada and the US and say, hey, we look a lot like this town here. They did X, Y, and Z and saw these outcomes, and we think that could be us as well. So if you don't have statistics locally, look outside, look for your peers, and try to replicate that in your grant application. And then last, learn as much as possible about the grant before you apply. Look at previous award winners. Do your customers see their peers in that list? Can you get examples of funded applications? Can you see what award sizes look like? If you think you have a $500,000 project, and you look at the list of awards and they are all in the tens of thousands, you probably shouldn't apply, or you should cut back your project because it's just not in line with what they typically fund. So look at previous awards, read as much about the grant as you can before you submit that application, and make sure you're, again, I'm saying your customers are putting their best foot forward on the application. And then last, get help when you need it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Go get help. Erica and the team here have built this really awesome program in the US, helping folks to understand that broad landscape of funding that's available to them, what grants are out there for me, and then helping them to actually apply to that funding source all the way up until they click submit. And they've worked with folks all across the spectrum of experience in terms of grants. And they do it completely at no cost and no obligation to the customers who use those services. They also have put together this group of grant writers that are available to help folks apply to those programs, put pen to paper on their behalf. And that ended up looking like a contract between the customer and grants office. That way there's no issues with bidding or conflict of interest down the road. So there's grant writers available, there's consultants available to kind of help them understand, and our team is always around to help in all those ways and more. So with that, I will pass things back to Zach, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I have Stephanie here with me as well. Like I mentioned before, I have a very global perspective on Grants Office, but Stephanie is here representing our awesome Canada team. So if you have a very, very specific question about Canada, I may kick that over to Stephanie.
Ashley, this is amazing. I learned a ton. I'm schooled up quite a bit in the US, but this was amazingly helpful for the Canadian market here. And I just want to thank you first and foremost. I've got a couple of questions that came into me directly. So it's no shock to anyone on this call, a lot of manufacturers have experienced some supply chain constraints. How does one prepare proper expectations in these grant applications so that the end users or the projects they're working on have that expectation of best capability to deliver by this time frame? What are some protections people can put in place?
Yep, that's a very good question. So I will note that actually in this year's budget, the Canada government actually extended a couple of programs because they have seen delays, not only in everybody shut down for several months, but also there have been a lot of supply chain issues. So for some grant programs, the government of Canada has actually extended the deadline to say, hey, you don't have to start construction by 2023. We're going to give you till 2024. That being said, every grant application is going to come with a timeline generated by the applicant. So they say, we want to start construction in this quarter of this year or this season of this year. So if you were concerned about supply chain, you can always have that be a range. So rather than we'd like to start by September, you could say we'd like to start between September and December or something like that. I would always overestimate that, by the way. I would always kind of go as far as you feel comfortable in terms of delay. You can always start before, but in order to start after your planned schedule, you'd have to, the applicant would have to just submit it's like a one-page piece of paper that basically says, hey, we said this, we're actually running on a delay because of XYZ reasons. Is it okay if we still do this? And they usually just say yes. So open conversation with the applicant and the funder. But if you're worried, put it in the application as a range.
All right. I love it. It's kind of like that Comcast service provider window of I will be at your house between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Yep. I had that for some furniture a couple of weeks ago. I just had to be at, well, I work from home, so it wasn't an issue, but I had to be at my home for an 8-hour window.
Sure. Man. The second question I got is, are there samples of successful grant applications out there that people can reference, and how would they find those if yes?
Sometimes. For the most part, they're not publicly available immediately. Most government agencies do not just post 20 for you to look through. A lot of times they have a lot of sensitive information, customer specific names and email addresses and phone numbers. You can always ask the funder through a public request. Hey, could I see blah, blah, this specific application? They may or may not provide that information to you. they may provide it and then just take 7 months to send it to you, which is what they love to do in the US. But if they are a peer or something that you feel comfortable with, you could always just reach out to the applicant directly. Hey, this city down the road got funding from here. Sometimes it's faster to just pick up the phone and give them a call. They're happy to brag about their success, and you can see the application in the meantime.
Very cool. I love it. Well, good. Are there any other questions for Ashley or Stephanie?
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
That was my cough. I need a drink of water break. I was hoping someone would fill the air with a question here. That's okay. So folks, what we're going to do now, I promised a break to the group. So on my Steve Jobs apparatus, I show 1:06 p.m. Central. Why don't we take a 10-minute break and come back together at 1:16 p.m. Central. All right. Ashley, thank you so much. Super informative. Erica, rock star as always. Take a break, everybody.
Have a good one.
Ashley Schultz, Ashley not only provided some amazing content to us in presentation form, but has thrown a hot link right into our chat where everybody can review all the different projects for the Universal Broadband Fund, or as they say, the UBF in Canada. So awesome. I am so glad we're back here from the break. Our next speaker, Thomas Schwab, he is a part of this sales acceleration group. And really, this team is all about supporting you guys in these projects. How do I get in touch with the grants office? How do I know what funding is available? What programs can I leverage in the RUCKUS world that Erica started off discussing? And what are some key things I need to know for this project in order to succeed? And that's all of our jobs as MBSI Wave, as RUCKUS, as the grants office in here while we support you. So Thomas, I am very much looking forward to this presentation. Again, ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, Thomas has global responsibility for the sales acceleration team within RUCKUS Wireless. So tell us all about that, Thomas.
All right, Zach, thank you so much for that introduction. And thanks to Erica, thanks to Ashley for all that you brought to us already. So Erica kind of set the stage a little bit, right? And talked a little bit about who we are as RUCKUS Networks, as a part of CommScope, what we do, and kind of what we've done here, particularly as it pertains to the response to the pandemic and the funding. And of course, Ashley has given all of us an insight into specifically what's available, right? What's available in Canada, at least a little bit of an insight. And certainly there's a lot more out there that, of course, you didn't have time to talk to. And so what we're going to do now is just shift just a little bit and talk about our little team, as Zach has given you a little bit of an introduction to our sales acceleration team, and how we've put together an initiative directly for you as our partners to add real benefit to your customers, to your prospects as it pertains to public funding opportunities, get those conversations started, and help to tie the need that your customers and prospects have into the funding that's available out there. So just a little bit about me. We certainly won't focus here. As Zach mentioned, I am the Director of Worldwide Sales Acceleration here at RUCKUS. Been with RUCKUS now actually only about a year and a half, but came for many years in the channel. I led one of our elite partners here in the Southeast. I actually live north of Atlanta, Georgia, and led one of our partners for many years with RUCKUS, and am honored to be part of such a wonderful team and partner framework. So a little bit about me, what we're going to talk about. Again, a little bit about the team. We'll discuss certainly somewhat about the pandemic. You may have heard about that and the impact that that's had, in our industry, certainly in your industries as well. What we've seen here in the States, what the U.S. did from a federal government perspective in response to that, and then certainly what we're seeing as opportunities up in Canada that are very similar, right? And then what we can do together to go out and add real value into the discussions with your customers. So how we got started, as a company and certainly even as a sales acceleration team, Ruckus Networks, hopefully you know us, hopefully you're partners with us. If you're not partners with us, we really are very eager to get the opportunity to talk to you. But as Erica mentioned, Ruckus Networks has been around for many, many years, certainly over 20 years now that we've been in business. And we offer to the world the best wireless indoor and outdoor out there. Certainly it's not all that we do, but that's kind of where we got our start, is Ruckus Wireless. And as we have grown and as things have gotten a little bit more complicated, we've become and turned into more of an agility dog, right? Which kind of comes with the adoption and the addition of our switch line, which we're very, very proud of. Our comprehensive software applications like our Ruckus Analytics and our Cloud Path applications and our cloud applications that really help to round out our full offering to a complete integrated offering set for your customers. And that's what we do as a corporation, as a sales acceleration team. That's a little bit about how we act, as well, as I'm sure Erica would attest to. Our focus as a team is to help our internal sellers and you as our partners with a number of key items, including strategic initiatives. This program that we have, this public funding program that we affectionately call Ruckus Fetch, in keeping with our dog, is a strategic initiative. It's a means by which we are working with you to analyze what's going on in the market, what are the key needs and priorities that our customers are experiencing, right, and what they're seeing, and what can we do to equip you with the right tools, the right knowledge, the right support, the right equipment, right, the right overall solutions to enable you to go out there and have the right conversations that will provide real benefit and give you a competitive edge. That is what we are all about as a team. We're kind of that little strategic team within sales. A little bit about what we did this past year. We kind of came out of the gates running really fast with this funding program that we called Ruckus Fetch. A big mashup of our different statistics there on the top, but you can just get the idea that there were an awful lot of opportunities that we helped to close through this program. A lot of information and reporting and analytics that we shared and equipped our partners with that turned into an awful lot of closed won business, guys, and we're quite proud of that. So that was really kind of how we came out of the gates. We continued to support our partners with what we called the Ruckus Challenge, which was detailed training about what we offer from a wireless perspective and how to go to market, as well as rounding out the year with software program and initiative that we're actually now continuing all of these items into 2022 in support of the channel. Okay, so that's a little bit about who we are and what we do as a team. Now let's talk about what we saw as a pandemic. I mean, certainly there's no mystery here. We all saw it. We all experienced it. And in a lot of ways, we're still experiencing it, right? A couple of years back, as a result of what occurred rather, we all faced unprecedented situations. Our customers experienced it. Certainly, when you look into the public sector, our schools, public sector agencies, local government agencies, they were obviously faced with unprecedented situations, things that they just did not, have the wherewithal to foresee that was going to happen, right? And in some cases, uncovered weaknesses that they didn't even know that they had, right? Infrastructure needs that have never been a requirement before all of a sudden became straight into the forefront. Erica started to mention, with students going remote and trying to work or trying to learn, in a hybrid environment, or agency workers trying to work from home to keep safe, they couldn't get connected. There wasn't good enough connectivity to make it reliable. Students were falling behind. And all these things that we didn't even know were going to be an issue, all of a sudden were thrust right into the forefront. And it uncovered an awful lot of items that we just didn't know were a problem. And so the government, at least, certainly in the US and Canada as well, but we'll focus on the US here because this is what we did last year. The US certainly came out with three primary bills, right? I think you've probably heard of all these: the CARES Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the American Rescue Plan. This is what happened in the States. This translated into an awful lot of money, right? That was brought down and made available, which was great. And we saw a lot of competition kind of going out and saying, hey guys, there's a lot of money out here. Let's find a way to take advantage of it. Let's find a way to get our hands on it. Which there's certainly nothing wrong with being opportunistic, but certainly the money was out there to be had, to be used for a reason. We saw really out of the gates, really at the beginning, we saw a lot of confusion about it. Certainly within the agencies, we saw a lot of what can we use it for? What's a good use case? What's a justifiable priority as it pertains to these buckets of money that are coming, down my way? And so we saw a little bit of spend, but we saw an awful lot of hoarding or holding on to this money for a long period of time. In some cases, started to see some of that money dry up because there's such a lack of understanding of what the money could be used for. As a result of that, we came out with this program at the early part of 2021 to arm and equip our partners and our customers with an understanding about these programs and about what we can do, with them. As Ashley mentioned, she brought a very comprehensive presentation to you just a few minutes ago about what is out there, in Canada. Certainly, there's a lot of opportunities from a government perspective, from a grant perspective, that you can take advantage of, and your customers can take advantage of, to help fund their priorities, which is great news, right? But what you're certainly experiencing in Canada, like we experience here in the States, is it's confusing. It's confusing for you. It's hard to know what a real opportunity is. It's hard to know what the money can be used for, what's justifiable, how much is out there, is any more coming? Is the money starting to dry up? What are we seeing? So it's confusing for you. It's definitely confusing for your customers. It's very common for us. We're out meeting with you name it, state agencies, local agencies, K-12, higher ed, whatever that agency might be. Very common for us to meet with these individuals where they have an extreme lack of understanding about what's possible. Either they don't know that the money is out there, or they don't know what it can be used for. They continue to focus largely on the budget that they have, and they're trying to juggle the priorities that they have always had with the priorities that they have now that are new. And so it's extremely confusing for all of them. You can bank on that, right? So what can we do to help you understand this, and what can we do to help you add real value into the conversations that you're having with your customers? So what we've done is we've partnered with Grant's office, Ashley and her team. Certainly partnered with the best in the business, guys. These guys understand funding, whether it's from a federal or provincial funding situation or local grant opportunities. These guys understand it. So we partnered with them to bring with you not only their expertise, but very specific, unique analytics and data that are meaningful straight to the client and prospect that you're talking to. So the three main ways in which we are here to help you: first and foremost, funding opportunities and reports, coupled with consultation. I'll talk about that in just a minute. How to navigate the application process. If you find that your customer or prospect is keen to go apply for a grant opportunity, that can be a very daunting thing, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how they're there to help provide expertise for that, and ongoing end-to-end support from this team to help you navigate that and get the answers that you need when you're out there trying to navigate these murky waters. So the funding opportunity reports. This is a really, really big deal right here in this initiative, and probably the primary use case that we see, and that is creating and delivering specific grants, funding reports to your clients. Essentially, what we mean by this is, if you've got an opportunity, you're talking with your customer, talking with your prospect, they've got a priority, they have a need, they've got a plan, but they don't know how they're going to pay for it, right? How common is that? The budget's been really kind of decimated. It has been for the last couple of years. and they don't know how they're going to pay for the priority that they have. Are there other opportunities out there that will help them potentially fund what's going on? So we've made this quite simple for you, which essentially is just a matter of filling out a one-page form. This is for all of our partners. You fill out a one-page form with your customer. You shoot that back over to us. Within 24 hours, a grants office consultant is going to be assigned to that opportunity and will then begin working right away on a very specific, customized, comprehensive report that is just for that agency that you're working with. And within 7 days, they're going to turn around that report and have that in your hands that you will then be able to take to your customer and say, here it is. We're getting ready to schedule a consultative session to go through this and come away with next steps and recommendations. And this really, guys, this really makes you a hero in their eyes. I promise you, I think, Erica, correct me if I'm wrong, over 300 of these in 2021. And the value that this provides to your customer is really kind of hard to measure. It opens their eyes not only for or on the possibilities of what they can do for this opportunity, but it begins to open their eyes to a much bigger world as to, well, what could I do maybe next time? The next time I have an opportunity or a priority, are there other ways that I can leverage these funds in the future? Because as I'm sure, hopefully most of you know, a lot of these grant opportunities are annual, right? They're an ongoing thing. So it's not just the pandemic, funding that we're talking about here. We're talking about supplemental complementary grants as well that can be used to supplement the budget that they have, or in some cases that they don't have, right? So this report is generated, it is delivered back to you, and then we schedule this consultative session, and we have found that the best, most successful way to conduct this is if you've got grants office, we're on there with you. Certainly, you are involved and your customers involved. Best to get the technical folks, the individuals who are responsible for the need, as well as hopefully some of the financial folks in the agency, and have a good, informed, weighty conversation about what's going on. Discuss the need, discuss what's in the report, begin to give them an idea of how to pull it apart, decipher it, and use it, and then go away and start thinking about what they want to do next. Okay.
Thomas, one quick thing. If you could go back 2 slides, please. I just don't want to just gloss over this, but this is just so powerful as a force multiplier. Thank you. You look back at that worksheet 1. That is just the finished product of what this program can do for all of you, and it doesn't cost anything except your time and your human capital. And this is a major force multiplier for all of you. And then when you go to that municipality, you go to those city planners that Ashley once was and says, I have a path to beautify your city, to return tourism to Canada, to return, to bring technology to the community. These folks are going to embrace that with open arms and say, man, I had no clue this funding was available from ISED. This funding was available from UBF. And all this takes, ladies and gentlemen, is curiosity on your behalf, the willingness to engage in these projects and to execute on them. And this is just an amazing tool that requires just your time to get started on this. And you look like a hero to your customers. So I just wanted to emphasize that. I think it's wicked awesome. Keep going.
Yeah,
Tom.
thank you for that, Zach. That's a great ad. It's certainly worth diving in to understand and pull apart a bit. I mean, you can see, as Zach mentioned, this is just the summary of what was contained within this one report. This one here was about 40 or so, 45 pages long of specific detail, not only of federal programs here up top, but individual grant opportunities that were relevant to the situation. And what the team takes into consideration for what they put in here is, okay, what type of agency, is it? Where are they physically located? Geographically, where are they? And then, what are they trying to do? And so all of those are taken into consideration to say, I'm going to compile and assemble all of the relevant, what we feel are relevant opportunities that would potentially be good use cases to find and capture funding for what you're trying to do. And that's what this is all about, right?
And it's a little bit hard to see on the slide, but it's, folks, here's all the programs available to you. These are the upcoming deadlines. And are you a possible match for this? Part of the benefit of this is the grants office will give you a no baloney assessment of saying, hey, you are eligible for this. And these are the ones you're likely to succeed with. So it's very objective, very informative, and we'll just line you all up to succeed.
That's right.
Thanks, Thomas.
You got it. Absolutely. And as I've been alluding to, this has been a program that we made available in the US in 2021. And so far, this has been primarily a US based initiative. However, this has been a little bit of a catalyst for us to say, we really need to expand this a bit and explore, is this something that we could offer up into Canada? Is there a good use case for it? Does it make sense? And this is a little bit of an introduction into that. So we have the ability to offer this, and we are reaching out to you to say, please make use of it, right? Because we've got the relationship with grants office in the US. That's a done deal. We now have the relationship with the grants office in Canada if there is demand for it. So please, help us quantify this and justify this by taking advantage of it. It's as Zach said, it's free for you. So again, this is the first piece is the funding opportunity and the comprehensive detailed report. And then we have the consultative session that goes along with that. The second major piece of it has to do with if you've got a customer who says, you know what, I want to move forward. This is fantastic. I want to find a way to move forward with this. I don't have all the money that I need. I don't have all the budget that I need to fund this thing, but this is a definite need that my customer has, we need to roll forward with this whole thing. So in this second piece of it, with the RUCKUS Sales Acceleration Team, along with our partnership with the Grants Office, and even with MSI Wave, we are working together to provide you with the expertise you need to help you do a number of things. Make sure that we give you the guidance on how to take the project or the plan that the customer has and break it up into fundable projects, right? How can we arrange this into comprehensible different projects that we can say, this is what it is, this is the need, we're going to do this, and the result is going to be that. And make sure that we align these with the grant opportunities that we feel are the best fit, and help provide the recommendation on how to apply for these and maximize the amount of funding that you would get. And in many cases, what this team will also do is, if you've got a customer who says, hey, I've got my application put together, I followed your recommendations, I'm ready to hit send, will you put a second pair of eyes on this before it goes out the door, which is one of the best things you can take advantage of with the grants office, because this is what they do all the time, and they're extremely good at it. They're extremely good at taking a look at that and saying, you know what, here's what I would emphasize more, I would emphasize this less, I would take that all together. And they've got a tracker to help make sure that you maximize your award. And they're very, very good at that. And then the final thing that they will do here as well, this is a for fee service that grants office does provide. If you've got a customer who says, look, I don't have time for this, I don't have the skill for this to apply for this grant, because those can be pretty lengthy and complicated things to do, they will do that on your customer's behalf and create that application. That is a for fee thing. It is, I promise you, well worth it, because it does not tend to be anything that's a great deal of fun if you don't know, if you're not experienced at it, and it's not an extremely expensive thing to do. So this is what here's what you will find as the third and final piece of it, which is really kind of all of the materials. On our public facing microsite, and their URL is there. All your customers, all your prospects, certainly even you as our partners, can go to the site and take a look and get access to the flyers and information that is out there, and gain more awareness, right, of what's going on, what the program is all about. Erica, myself, our dedicated team is here to support you here to support your customers. Our email address is there. It's public-funding-support@comscope.com. Please reach out to us. Let us know how we can help you. Reach out to your Ruckus partner account manager or territory account manager. Guys, I promise you, they know all about this program, and they're there to help make sure that you get tied into and access to the right materials or right individuals. And then as a partner, if hopefully you're familiar with our partner portal, you can launch over into the partner portal and get access to specific marketing materials, presentations that you can co-brand and co-logo, briefs, analytics, reports. It's all out there for you. Please take advantage of it. That is the program. Certainly won't go into all of this, but just to give you an idea of how comprehensive the use cases are that we are seeing. They really kind of go across, certainly multiple different verticals across a lot of different technologies. From a Ruckus perspective, certainly we are seeing a great deal of indoor, outdoor Wi-Fi, kind of a collaboration between schools, municipalities, pooling of resources, and solving multiple problems at once by outdoor Wi-Fi is a huge use case. But we're seeing a lot of adoption here within higher ed, certainly within transportation and healthcare as well. And you can see the types of things that we're doing. Erica mentioned Hidalgo County. Certainly won't go back over exactly what she said, but just wanted to highlight one or two things. Through this program, we were able to help them realize a great deal of stimulus money, make them aware of it, and tie them in with it, and get them additional complimentary grant money that they did not know that they could gain access to, which helped them fund it and get it going. And the success really breeded the success on this, because they started with an initial phase. It was so wildly successful and gained so much public attention that it has continued to ripple out, and they're continuing to grow and install more and more of the product to serve more and more of the individuals in the community for this project, and it has been very, very successful. So we're quite proud of that, and we're quite grateful to be a part of that whole initiative. And another one here that's just to give you a sense that this isn't something that's in the past. It's actually still relevant now. This is just one of many in Illinois, the city of East Moline. Similar type of idea, but is looking to provide free wireless across students and families, in the township surrounding areas for the same needs. Students falling behind can't, rely on their little MiFi devices to give them consistent connectivity. Oh my goodness, what do we do? And this has been something where we have worked with them to help tie them to funding and help to kick this project off and get it going. So. Well, we'll provide you with these links, but I would encourage you to go out and take a look at this, because another one that we're proud of and have helped to make successful. Okay, and that's it, Zach, for me. And Erica, I don't know if there's anything I missed, because you give this presentation as much or more than I do. But that's hopefully a little bit of an insight and a look into what this initiative is all about and how we can hopefully help you.
Erica, what did he miss?
You didn't miss anything. That's a great overview. Thank you, Thomas. Just wanted to emphasize that this program has been expanded for the next quarter to Canada. So feel free to reach out to our team, as Thomas showed you, and take advantage while it's here. And we're here to help.
Awesome. All right. We covered a lot up until this point, folks. And really, we've covered everything from the products, the technologies, the sample projects that have gone on, the different funding sources and schedules, and how to engage with the sales acceleration team. And the last piece of this is, okay, we've identified the funding. We have the strong technology to be able to accomplish what we say we're going to. And then really the last part of it is all about proof of concept. So prove it to me. So I'm a municipality, I want public Wi-Fi, or I want tourism to return. So I want better Wi-Fi for my hotels and parks and all sorts of other things. And Mr. Matt Bianco is going to guide us through proof of concept best practices. Matt, are you ready to go, sir?
I am, Zach. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Well, this is a completely, like Zach said, this is a completely different conversation. Let me share my screen first. So, switching things up a little bit, but hopefully you'll find some value in it. One of the things that we noticed as we went through over the course of the past year or so is that, we didn't really have a great systematic approach to proof of concepts. So one of the things that my team, and I'm based out of Ohio, but I cover all of North America. My title is I'm a principal systems engineering manager. So I have kind of an overlay team of technical experts that can help with a wide variety of things. And one of the things that we do a lot of is proof of concepts. And one of the things that we also did was kind of put together a more systematic approach to proof of concepts. So this is kind of a generic approach. It's not specific to some of the use cases that have been described here, but it certainly applies. And it's also very important to note that you'll see multiple times that, part of this is engaging the resources that you have available from RUCKUS, right? I mean, we do have from our field systems engineers to our overlay teams, we have a wide variety of people with a wide variety of skill sets that can definitely help our product to shine and you to shine when you go in and really put the specific use case into play for a customer. But wanted to talk about why first. Why do we do proof of concepts? And so I'll ask you a simple question. What are the best kinds of customers? You can be thinking to yourself, I know you can't actually respond to me, but it's existing customers. It's a fairly easy answer. Why? Well, they account for 65% of a customer's business. The probability of selling to an existing customer is actually 60 to 70%, while the probability of selling to a new prospect is 5 to 20%. And loyal customers spend a lot more than new customers. So how do we get new customers? And that's what we're talking about here. And what are the best kinds of new customers? So early on in my career, I had the fortune of selling a very large opportunity. This is probably 20 years ago. I've been doing this for a long time. I sold millions of dollars worth of switches to a federal agency, and I was so excited to help them get them installed and get them configured. And I kept, pushing and waiting and asking, and it never happened, and it never happened. And then a year later, still hadn't installed the stuff. It was sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And I was complaining about it to one of the more senior SEs on my team. And he said, Matt, that's the best kind of customer. Customers who buy your products and never deploy them. You never have to troubleshoot them. You never have to do anything with them. So I kind of joke about those. Those guys are unicorns. Very rare. Customers who will buy whatever products you recommend without verification. That's a trust or relationship-based customer. And that, that can be a very good thing. It can also work against you if for some reason they lose that trust in you. But customers that we like the best are customers that challenge your assertions. They test to verify and they keep buying because you solve a problem for them. And I call them the trust and verify customers. And really, ultimately, they're your most loyal customers. So how do we build, or how do we deal with trust and verify customers? We like this type of customer if we succeed. We demonstrated value. And how do we gain trust? Well, there's some obvious ways, right? So an obvious way is you make a great product. We make the best wireless products in the world. We make darn good switching products. And, this is, and our software solutions are just awesome, right? Especially RUCKUS Analytics, which I'll mention more than once today. So make a great product, build a reputation for transparency. I think that's absolutely been the crux of my career and why I've had success. Is even if I don't always have the optimal solution, I'm going to tell the customer that, right? I'm going to work on building that relationship. Listen more than you speak, and help customers solve problems. Pretty easy. So that's the trust part. Now, the verify part, this is where we have to overcome technical objections. And I love this from Meet the Parents. This is I love that he's doing the test there to make sure he's actually telling the truth. So this is where we earn our paycheck, and we have a lot of collateral that's available that is stuff that's used to overcome technical objections. So our packet 6 testing, we have lots of collateral on our technologies and our patents, doing things like whiteboarding sessions, design sessions. You've heard about Hidalgo and East Moline, and using, if available, those customers as references is certainly a great way to overcome technical objections. And then, of course, demoing and doing things that are fairly easy to do, but don't necessarily involve putting equipment at a customer. But you still may well end up in a scenario where you have to prove it, right? And that's where a proof of concept really kicks in. And it kind of does two things for you. It does both trust and verify. So how does it address the trust issues? Well, it demonstrates your ability to resolve problems. It targets their areas of concern, and it demonstrates your expertise and professionalism, right? I mean, so that's kind of the trust piece. The verify piece is, you're going to look at specific things that they are concerned about. Customers are always concerned about different kinds of things. Some of them, it might be simply an ease of use thing. It's their other stuff is too hard to use. Some of them might have performance issues. Some of them might struggle with troubleshooting, or they might struggle with all three of these areas. This is your opportunity to demonstrate how the products that you're bringing to them can handle all of those things. And we're going to show you some pieces that we've put in place to really help nail that down. So maybe you don't want to do a POC. There's certainly objections to doing POCs. And so here's my first attempt to overcome this objection. Why might you not want to do a POC? Well, the biggest complaint I hear is something might go wrong and I'm going to blow the deal. I'll make it very clear, something will go wrong. Something always goes wrong. But the obvious advantage or opportunity that's presented when something goes wrong is it gives you an opportunity to show the customers how you solve problems, right? How you handle adversity and how quickly the products and company can respond to their issues. So this is an opportunity that you might not otherwise have if you weren't doing a proof of concept. It can be time consuming. I will agree with that. POCs can be time consuming, and it isn't easy to get new strategic customers, right? These are, some of the deals we're talking about here are large customers. It's not a no-brainer to go in there and assume that you're going to beat the competition just because we've put these plans together. It doesn't necessarily mean they may just take the plans that we put together and go to one of our competitors, right? So this is an opportunity, to spend the time, to spend the cycles. And of course, you do have to qualify the deal, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. And maybe you just don't know how. And that's what we're here for as a company. And that's what some of the pieces that I put together here are for as well. So what are the steps to a successful proof of concept? Qualify, qualify, qualify. Absolutely. Really, and I'll show you a nice little document that I put together, and all of this stuff is available through your RUCKUS SE and will soon be available on the partner portal. But when I say qualified, you got to make sure the deal's worth it. You got to make sure that that the customer's actually, is looking at a competitive solution. They are looking at your solution seriously. And there's a bunch of questions you can kind of ask to make sure that that's really what's going to happen. Create a test plan with the customer and get the customer to sign off on the test plan, and then use it if possible. Doesn't always work, but it's nice if you can use it as a gate for closing the deal. Mr. Customer, if we execute on X, Y, and Z and show you that this stuff does what it's supposed to do, are we, at the next step? Are we going to take the next step and actually do business together? Determine what tools and resources you need, execute on the plan, and then close out the test and provide the customer with documentation. For the more strategic deals, I'm definitely going to recommend as well that you plan and review with your RUCKUS account team. So the primary reason is, well, there's lots of reasons, but one of the primary reasons would be SEs see a lot of stuff, right? We see, and I'm referring to systems engineers, but we see a lot of stuff from competitive deals. We see a lot of issues as well. So sometimes there's something that we know about that's broken or isn't working quite correctly, and you're out there trying to do a proof of concept for a customer, and you're thinking that this is something that no one's ever run into. Meanwhile, we're aware of it. We don't necessarily publish all that stuff like most hardware manufacturers, but we know about it. So you kind of have to work with us and make sure that you're asking the right questions, and that we're here for you. We're here to make that thing be successful. All right, so let's talk about qualify. What do I mean when I qualify? Well, I actually wrote up a RUCKUS POC qualification checklist. It's actually 2 pages long. but it asks a lot of really basic questions that you probably ask yourself, but you probably don't have a systematic kind of approach to, hey, what am I actually doing with this? And so there's the obvious sales qualification, right? This may or may not be, this is stuff you're doing kind of probably in your head and just asking these questions as you go along. But of course, is there budget? What's the completion date? What's the competition? What's the purchasing criteria? All the good stuff that would normally go along with a sales qualification. Is this really a real deal? Then you get into some additional areas, and I think, yeah, do they have a test plan? What are they testing? Are they testing APs, switches, cloud? What type of controller environment? Are they testing RUCKUS Analytics? Do they have an analytics solution? Do they have an onboarding solution? Do they, are these pieces important to them with regards to what they might want to test and see how it works? And then I highlighted two things down here as you're going through this sort of test qualification process. What's the definition of success, which is, one of the things that is often overlooked, but we kind of help you with some of the test plans we put together. And then I'll probably say this more than once on this call, because as you're going through proof of concepts, are the firewalls set up correctly? That's like the question you have to ask more and more times than you care to, because that seems to always be the problem as we're going through this. Okay, so we qualified the deal. We know we got a good deal. We're going to invest the time and energy. So now we need to create a document. Now they might have their own test plan. They might have a test plan that they've worked through with another vendor, or that they've worked through and come up with their own list of items. If not, we have sample test plans for you. So we have kind of a long view, which is what we call kind of the proof of value, which is a multi-page document that walks through who's involved, what the dates and times are, and what types of things that they're looking to cover. We also have simple one-pagers. So, if this is a small deal or it's a relatively easy thing that they're trying to check off, we have a one page that just says, who's the customer, when is it, what are the conditions, who's the point of contact, and here's a bunch of things. And you'll notice, hopefully you can see this, that we have just simple pass fail boxes on a whole bunch of tests. I'll show you a more complicated test plan where we do exactly the same thing, make it as easy as possible. Did we pass or did we fail? And in the scenario, where we might have had a failure or some type of issue, we leave a place for notes and comments so that we can follow up on it as needed. One of the most important things you can do with the test plan document is make sure your customer signs off on this and says, yes, this is what we want to test. Why am I saying that? Because you do not want this. I mean, it's going to happen anyway, but scope creep is the enemy of all proof of concepts, right? If you don't have a well-defined test plan, if you don't have a method of operation as you're going in to work with a customer, guess what? They're going to keep adding things, and they're going to keep changing things, and they're going to keep, I'm working right now on an opportunity that's still ongoing. It's a proof of concept that's been going on for a year, and it's because it's actually what triggered a lot of this. We didn't have a well-defined process, and we're in a place now where we're still testing things that were never clearly defined up front. So definitely don't want that scenario. That's a bad scenario. So still on the test plan, what we've kind of done is we created a library of test templates. So they fall under kind of different categories. And I mentioned earlier, performance, troubleshooting, usability, deployment. There's a bunch of different aspects to building, maintaining, troubleshooting a network, right? And so we've put these tests in place to make it simple for a customer to sort of test certain types of features. And what you can do is take the previous document, which was this, and just append these tests directly to the document, whichever ones that you might want to do. I'll show you another more detailed example. So this is a full-blown test template, but this is troubleshooting connection failures with RUCKUS Analytics. So I've mentioned RUCKUS Analytics before. I'll continue to mention it because I think it's actually one of the coolest things we do. And this particular one walks a customer through if they had a scenario where someone was simply entering So say, for instance, the wrong pre-shared key, or that you had problems with Radius on the back end and they couldn't get authenticated to the network. Look how quickly Ruckus Analytics identifies the problem, troubleshoots the problem for them and tells them exactly where the problem is. And this test is designed to do exactly that for a customer. And again, you'll notice the little success and failure boxes. Did we pass? Did we not pass? Keep it simple. And there's a place for comments down here if something should not go well. So there's hundreds of these tests that you can append to your test plan document and walk through it with a customer. Boy, if I haven't pushed on Ruckus Analytics enough today, I will say it for the third time. It really is a great tool. We are selling it like hotcakes right now. And by the way, talk about supply chain issues. Guess what? Software is always in stock, right? So there's no supply chain issue with our software. This is a great way of showing value to a customer for a variety of different scenarios. There's a bunch of test plans that are written specifically to analytics and specifically for things to show up very quickly. So when you're running your proof of concept, you can show them, hey, I have XYZ problem. I'm going to recreate the problem and show you the problem. And I'm going to show you how you troubleshoot this thing on the fly. But there's a lot of other stuff built into Ruckus Analytics that has really unbelievable value for a customer.
Doesn't even require a lift gate to receive it, Matt.
No, it's so easy.
It's wicked.
So you've set up your test plan, you qualify the deal. Now you have to figure out what resources you need. And I think this is a step that gets overlooked a lot. But really this is just to highlight that, none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, right? You need tools, you need people. So tools, whatever the tools happen to be, the customer may have their own tools. You may have your tools that you want to bring to the table. And then, of course, this is a great place to involve your Ruckus SE team. And you may need to talk to the customer security team. You may need to talk to the server team. You may need to talk to their change management team if you're making changes to their production environment. Those are all the kinds of things that typically come into play here. So guess what? I came up with another checklist. I like checklists if you can't tell. So ultimately, this implementation checklist is more oriented towards things so you don't forget and end up at some oddball hour getting a phone call, or some oddball hour having to call a security guy because the firewall rules were wrong. Like, this helps you work through all that stuff, or helps your team work through all that stuff. So it shortens the time to get things up and running, identifies gaps in planning, and makes sure that all the relevant parties are included. So what kinds of things do I put into my implementation checklist? Things like architecture, things like really simple things like, is the bill of material right? Did I give them the right licenses? Did I ship out the right products? What versions of code will we be using? It's a common area that people overlook and don't think about, because they may want something that's bleeding edge, or they may want something that's more target path oriented. But they're going to have different feature sets available to them. So you get the idea. And then probably the last one on here is, we strongly recommend that you open up a proactive TAC case for a high visibility proof of concept environment. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know that these changes are being made in advance, and there'll be more ways. Way easier once the case is open to actually engage the TAC team should something go wrong. So step 4 is execute the test with the customer. If you did steps 1 through 3 well, this should be a no-brainer. You've identified and locked down exactly how these tests are going to run. You know what the pass-fail criteria are. So it should be pretty straightforward. You may need to do some additional definition with things if their environment is unique for some particular reason, but you kind of get the idea here. If you've done the first 3 steps, the actual executing the test is relatively straightforward. But what happens if something goes wrong? So one particular test fails, or we can't get something to work with. A common scenario that we see is there's some specific client, or there's some specific version of operating system on a client that isn't working particularly well, or isn't connecting for some reason. Well, I give you an easy list here. Figure out what the priority of the test is to the customer. If this is a one-off device that they don't really care about and it's not a big concern, then move on with their understanding and with their agreement. If it's very high priority, then you're going to want to repeat the test, record the results, gather any relevant information. And of course, I like to always say, do not, you shouldn't assume it's the network. Everybody else always does, but it's not always the network, right? Engage with your RUCKUS SE. This is another great thing to do because, again, your RUCKUS SE may have seen this exact same issue and said, oh, all you need to do is tweak such and such a timer because that's special for this particular type of Apple device. That's a very common scenario. We may have seen that in the past. And if it's not easily resolved, then we engage the TAC organization. Remember that you pre-opened a case and let them know what you're witnessing. And that's a great opportunity for the customer to see how our TAC organization works and kind of the behind the scenes of what goes on at RUCKUS. Step 5 is close out the test. So this is an important step in the sense that everything you've built up to this point in writing up a proof of concept document, documenting your tests, walking them through these checklists as well, all of that can be assimilated into a final document that you can say, here you go, Mr. Customer, here's what we've done. Here's what we agree to from day one. Here's where we pass all these tests. If there's open items, you can certainly document that as well. And then I typically recommend, one of the reasons I like RUCKUS Analytics in particular for this type of information is you can give them a performance report, or you can give them something that's useful information to them about their environment and about what you saw at their environment from a RUCKUS Analytics perspective. So all of that can go into the final document that you return to the customer. Of course, it emphasizes our professionalism. It emphasizes the transparency. This is what we tested. This is where we passed. This is where we failed. Hopefully there's not a lot of failures, but that's the scenario. And by the way, I will say a lot of the tests that I mentioned when I said that there's all these tests, they are oriented for us to succeed, right? So, we didn't design tests that are going to make us look bad, right? So just to be clear, but at the same time, there are always scenarios where things happen in a test environment that you cannot predict and that, you're going to have to overcome kind of on the fly. So hopefully this process will help you to do that. And then look for this on the portal. I'm working through it right now with our legal team to get these documents published, but there will be a link for checklists and for templates and for the test plans. So that's going to happen hopefully in the next month or two. My target is Q2 of this year for availability. But by the way, if you need any of this stuff, just contact your RUCKUS SE. They have access to it. It's all on an internal SharePoint site right now. So they can get it for you and give it to you directly, and you can build your own test plans. That's it. That's what I have for today. And I'm open to any questions.
Man, thank you so much for the support, sir. That is fantastic. I think when you look at how do I succeed as an integrator, as a WISP, as somebody on this call with this team, I think we've covered many, many facets where everyone is just very, very well supported. So one other thing to mention too, I mentioned very early on in the beginning, MBSI Wave is also aligned very, very closely with Wave in the States here. And so when you talk about proof of concepts, when you talk about the city of Hidalgo and other projects that have gone on, Wave has their fingerprints all over those projects. And we know the size and scope and the requirements of these cities and what an integrator or a service provider may need to succeed in those environments. So leverage the MBSI Wave's team success here and their team in order to really have those discussions, get engineering involved. What do we do on the sales side? How do we engage with the sales acceleration group and the grants office? And can Matt and his team have a last look at my proof of concept and my network that MBSI Wave helped me design? So we're here to support all of you and be successful, folks. It starts with curiosity, and it starts with also becoming a RUCKUS partner through MBSI Wave. So we're here to support all of you. So as far as questions and chat is concerned, we've been a little bit quiet in the second half here. If anybody does have a question, I will make a last call for alcohol question here. I've been drinking all this time. I don't know about all of you guys. No, I'm just joking. This is water, not vodka. No, but if we have any questions, please do type those in and let us know what you want to know. Welcome back, Ashley. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. Folks, on behalf of MBSI Wave and Ruckus and the Grants Office, we just appreciate your time this afternoon. Hopefully you found it very valuable and know that the MBSI Wave team will be reaching out to you guys. This has been recorded. We're going to send you, if there's any information you missed or you're typing fast on Google while Ashley was throwing acronyms at you, we've got you back and you can listen back to this recording. So thank you guys so much. We look forward to working with you and helping you succeed in these Ruckus and federal and provincial funding environments. Thank you, everyone. Panelists, nice job. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thanks much.
All right. You guys have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.